Hello and welcome to Murder with Friends, the show where two friends get together and talk about the darker sides of history. I'm your host, Grace Baldridge, and joining me again today is my roommate and all-around great guy, comedian Jay Light. Jay,
hey.
Welcome back to the show.
Hello.
You guys might remember him from, you did John Wayne Gacy, you did that episode.
Right over your little corner over there.
Guy, little scary clown
Old
behind
Johnny.
me. What have you been up to since then?
Well, I have been
as if I don't live with you.
Yeah, as if we're not talking about it all the time. I've been doing a lot of stand-up. I was on this most recent season of Comedy Central's Roast Battle. Made it to the finals of that, lost to the champ.
Yeah.
And have been humbled greatly since then.
Yeah, and what do you have coming up?
I'm going to be in New York City next week. I'll be there doing a run of shows, including a roast battle out there at the Stand.
Oh, cool.
But I've got shows at clubs and bars and stuff. The Stand's great. It's an amazing club.
So if anyone watching is interested in catching some good stand-up, Jay's gonna be in New York, so you should go hang out.
You can see all my dates, jlightcomedy.com.
Sure.
That's the best place to check it out.
Talk about some creepy stories with him after a show. Jay, I knew that I wanted to have you back on. We obviously live together. We talked about which cases we want to cover. And you brought up talking about Columbine. Now, I didn't live in the United States when Columbine happened. So I kind of came into learning about this case as a little bit of a foreigner, but this is something that you lived, remembered, and experienced. So for someone who was a little bit like me, unfamiliar to Columbine, how would you sort of describe what we're gonna be getting into today?
So what we're gonna be basically talking about today is Columbine is essentially the first school shooting that got any kind of like media coverage. You know, there'd been incidents at schools before, but Columbine is a very particular, in the way that it was covered, the lead up to it, and sort of the way that people tried to explain what happened. I think it's a very fascinating case to talk about.
Yeah, and with that being said, here's a little teaser of what happened at Columbine.
On April the 20th, 1999, Eric Harris and another Columbine student, Dylan Klebold, committed the worst high school massacre in American history. They killed 12 students and 1 teacher, injured 23 others, and then turned the guns on themselves.
It's truly one of, it's a tragedy that shaped and informed America and schooling, and we're gonna get into that in part 3. I wanna talk about the larger impact of Columbine.
Oh boy, was there ever an impact.
Yeah, but first let's start at the beginning. This story begins with 2 friends, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. They are the gunmen, they are the shooters. They became infamous because of what happened at Columbine, but who were these kids before they became the infamous shooters? What was their dynamic?
So basically, Eric and Dylan were friends who they bonded over things like video games. They both worked in their schools, like their AV club, essentially.
Yeah.
It's not the exact term for it because it's like varies on a school by school basis, but they're very computer savvy. Played a lot of video games, hung out together a lot, and they were kind of loners, but not exactly. Like, it's not like they didn't have friends.
Right, a big narrative that gets picked up following the shooting is that these were kids who were bullied relentlessly, that were pushed to their brink and then acted out. And that is something that I had believed without doing any further research, just from passing conversations, what you hear about. Columbine was 2 kids that were bullied that took it upon themselves to seek justice against the jocks that they felt were victimizing them. But going back to accounts of their friends, from what I understand, is that they weren't the popular kids, but they weren't devoid of friends. Dylan went to prom. Dylan was well liked. He was a little shy, but he definitely looked out for Eric, who was a little bit more of an outsider.
Right.
But they had friendships.
They had friends.
They
Eric was kind of a ladies' man, from what I understand.
Really?
Upon further explanations and further looking into his past.
Yeah.
I would definitely encourage anybody who is more interested in after this episode to go read. I believe it's Dave Cullen, his book Columbine. It kind of expands upon the whole mythos of what happened there, and we're gonna kind of delve into that today.
Right. And with that being said, you touch on their videos that they make. And this is something that you see a lot. When you watch a documentary about Columbine, as the many that I've seen leading up to today, there are a lot of home videos that they'll show, and what really frustrated me coming into this is that they are edited and cut to sort of misrepresent what these videos were, which they were sketches. They weren't
they were creative works. Like there's a thing that they would talk about their creative output with these videos and in stuff they'd done for creative writing classes, where they'd written stuff that was kind of, you know, had a darker tone or was kind of violent. There was a story that Eric wrote for class that was based in the world of the video game Doom, which there's a very common theme throughout the whole of Columbine that involves that video game.
Right.
And he, you know, his teachers praised him for the work he was putting out because it was good. As far as creatively, it was daring, and his teachers praised him for his style. And you know, same with these videos. These were produced for class, but they were edited together in all of the news coverage of the event to make it look like this was something like
more sinister than what it actually was. And while it is very disturbing to watch, knowing what we know now, the videos themselves, at least the ones that have been released, and there are basement tapes that have not yet been released, probably will never be released to the public. Let's take a look at some of these videos that we're talking about, unedited. Here we go.
We can protect you, but for our cops. We'll pay anything. Very well.
No, you goddamn little bitch-ass piece of shit! Do not! God damn it. No, you goddamn piece of bitch-ass shit! Do not even screw with that little kid! If you do, I'll rip off your goddamn head and shove it so far up your...
So that is from a thing that they wrote and starred in, I guess, called Hitmen for Hire. And the premise of Hitmen for Hire is they are hitmen, they're trenchcoat mafia, and they are hired to protect kids that are being bullied at their school. So that's where we see the theme of bullying start, but it isn't as, it's not an outline of what they did at Columbine. And I felt so misled by some of the things that I had been seeing, some of the things that were being put out there, because I thought that they'd actually filmed themselves and that they had friends of theirs were complicit in filming them go through the school and show their exact plan of what they were gonna do at Columbine. And it's just simply not the case,
No,
Jay.
not the case at all. And there's a lot of stuff that when you look at all the media coverage of the shooting, there's very easy things that you can take out of context from that.
Right.
You can cut before he starts cracking up laughing because he can't remember the line or because he's swearing so much that he can't get the line right because it's for a school project. This is the kind of video that when I was in high school, I was making video sketches and stuff for class projects. I could see why they would make a video like this.
Right, but that being said, Jay, these were still two very troubled kids that found camaraderie with each other. So there are things that we can take out of context that have been taken out of context, and I think that's irresponsible. But when you boil it down to the writings, the online manifests that Eric Harris had.
He had his whole website, his rants, his AOL page filled with like just angry blogging and angry diary entries.
And it's not as, it's also not as pointed as I had thought before really looking at the facts here. A lot of it is sort of, it's general, it's racist, it's anti-Semitic sometimes. Sometimes it's aimed at jocks, but sometimes it's everyone, sometimes it's friends of theirs. He called out their friend Brooks Brown on his online page, who was a friend of his.
And he had he had gotten to the point where his online harassment of Brooks Brown, their friendship ended, and his parents, Brooks's parents, called the cops on Eric Harris. And they wrote up a search warrant that was never executed.
Yeah, the law enforcement had drafted an affidavit that they could have gotten a search warrant to search the residence of Eric Harris. Had they done so, they would have found so much ammunition, explosives, pipe bombs, guns.
And that's the kind of stuff that Eric was writing about too. Is his, you know, there's obviously a lot of the context of what we know about Eric now is that he was pretty much a dyed-in-the-wool psychopath. And he had a lot of his writings at the end of his life were him writing about very violent things, writing about how to make explosives. And
when is the best time of day to kill as many people in the cafeteria as possible.
And plotting it out as intricately as time based on timetables. And where to place things to cause the most collateral damage.
I think what fascinates people and captivates people about this case is that the writing was on the wall, but no one was trying to read it. You know, no one was really seeing the signs that were there. And instead, after the fact, we look back at footage that doesn't actually indicate exactly what we want it to, and we're like, oh, look at these scary home videos, instead of look at the public writing that was actually more terrifying than the sketch that they were doing for class. Although looking back at the videos of them doing target practice as well is also incredibly troubling.
Yeah. Well, but let's be honest here. If we're gonna look at media footage, what's more visually interesting to look at? Home videos or pages from your AOL website?
Right, yeah, what's more troubling? But the signs were all there. And unfortunately, no one stopped anything from happening. So when we come back in part 2, we're gonna tell you what happened April 20th, 1999 at Columbine High School.